Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. Dear friends, I appreciate everybody coming out for this evening talk at the conclusion of our day-long retreat on seeing the uncreated. In the characteristics of Nibbana, it is said there is the not born, not become, not made, not constructed. And this is one of the descriptions of Nibbana, of the aim of our practice. What we have been developing throughout the day is to realize actually how profoundly, deeply the natural mind is inclined towards consistently becoming, making, creating, conceiving, inventing, and fabricating our own reality. And I want to not disparage this tendency of the human mind, but rather to let us see in what way there is the delight and the value in this, in the natural mind. So we have been examining how, well, in the process of life, we choose to do many things for the sake of having a good life, for the sake of having a happy life. It could be that the greatest creation or the creative work for a lot of people is simply to create a happy life or to create a good life. Or if somebody is connected to a family, to create a happy home, to create a happy family. You could say that this creating a good life could slide off into something that's a bit more phony if you thought of somebody who's creating a profile on social media and they think of, for each thing that happens to them, then immediately creating some kind of very beautiful and perfect imagery to put up on their website or on their whatever kind of stream they're managing in order to portray themselves as being some kind of one of the beautiful people with a beautiful life, which may be really going away from reality and towards a fabrication that's quite confused about what real happiness is versus the appearance of happiness. But then it can also be true that the aim to make a happy life is sincere, natural, and humble, not conceited. And it also may be that people who are not self-centered may have some larger purpose that they're committed to, some kind of work that they're engaged with in the world, which is of value to others, a kind of a service to the world. And in that sense, their creativity is dedicated to some purpose which is larger than themselves. It could be something that's involved with the social world of humans, that's involved with study or investigation, invention, could be involved with the arts and with creation. And in all of these cases, we find a foothold for our sense of being grounded and worthy and safe, meaningful, based on what we are involved in creating. We may come to identify with what we are creating in a sense that somebody could see it as being egotistical or proud, being over-identified, and then we can see how people would suffer from being over-identified with their creation, in which case they could become overly defensive, overly protective, willing to sacrifice their morality in order to protect their position or their creation, in order to protect their work. People go into all of these traps. But even if someone doesn't go astray with morality, doesn't become conceited, nevertheless, there is both a danger that inevitably there is this identification of the self with our creativity. In the sutta on turning the wheel of Dhamma, at the end of the sutta, after the Buddha has explained the Four Noble Truths, and then one of the five disciples, Bhikkhu Kondanya, has the Dhamma eye opens, and he obtains his dream entry with the realization that everything that arises must cease. Then the devas, the gods throughout the universe, see what's happening, and they all begin to rejoice. And so there's this paean of joy that's going up and down the heavens in these different ranks of the different groups of gods in heaven. And one of the groups of the gods is called the gods who delight in creation. This is like corresponding, I think, with perhaps the idea of the creator God. And so the creator God thinks that they have created the world, and they also are relishing, enjoying, delighting in this act of creation. It's very profound, and this is a simile for us about how profound and significant and important it is for a natural person who's not yet grounded in the Dhamma, their creativity. And then the next rank of the gods is called the gods who delight in the creation of others. And I think, in a certain kind of way, because of the way things have gone with the media, it's so easy to come home in the evening and turn on the TV and watch a show, or open the computer and watch something on the computer. And in that case, one is in a certain way, you could say passive, but then one can also be really engaged and alive and awake and delighting, taking pleasure in what has been created by these creative artists, whether they created a play or some music or some art or some other kind of presentation. But we can, when we have had a chance to hear the Dhamma, and when we've had a chance to see the danger in identifying with all of our creations, we can see that there is something beyond the created. That which is not born, not become, not made, not constructed, not created. And the other quality of the uncreated would be that what is uncreated is not personal. It's not individual. It's not about me. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't have any of the hazards or risks that are involved with anything that we could conceive of as being in relationship to the self. There's another quality of the uncreated or of the Nibbana element, and that is that it is unshakable. They would say of the consciousness of the living arahant, a fully enlightened person who is still alive, that their consciousness is unshakable. The consciousness, we just talked about this earlier, that one of the aspects of consciousness is what we call in Western philosophy as intentionality, or the consciousness is directed towards some object, that it allows the awareness to focus on seeing some particular object. And then if the consciousness is inclining towards existence, towards protecting our continued existence, or inclining either towards existence or towards non-existence, or inclining towards some particular kind of existence, say, I want to continue the existence I have, or I see the woeful side of this existence and I would like to have an existence in heaven, or I see the disadvantages of heaven and I want to be born in a space of infinite consciousness, or a space of one of the immaterial states, which is not qualified by pleasure, but is qualified by being a profoundly neutral, profoundly still and peaceful. If I'm conceiving that as an existence and I'm inclining towards living my life in such a way to go towards that existence, then it's like leaning into a certain kind of existence. I think there's a certain kind of a self-help, popular self-help idea about lean forward or lean into, So you set your goals in life or your values in life, and then you lean into them, and this becomes leaning into some type of existence. If you are leaning, then you are not stable. You're not steady. And then if there's unsteadiness, then there's a disturbance of the mind, the agitation of the mind, the shaking of the mind, the reactivity of the mind. So the opposite of that is a state which is tranquil, in which the naming or creating of concepts is not a thing. It's not happening anymore. We spoke about this earlier, how naming something or creating a concept about something is where you see some certain limited aspect of the other, of the object, of what you see, and because of the sign that you are perceiving, you know what to do. So if it's a chair, you know that it's for sitting on or for offering a seat to somebody. If it's lunch, you know that it's for eating. If it's something beneficial and wholesome, it's something that we just would like to keep. If it's something that's dangerous or unsafe, we would like to avoid. So this naming is part of evaluating everything and picking up on just the aspect of all the things and all the people and all the beings in our life, in our experience, and seeing whether all of those things are favorable to our desired existence or not favorable. And that naming is contributing to some instability, because the naming is part of being an action toy which keeps on doing things. If there's no naming, there's no coming and going. That means going from one life to another life. No making a distinction between here and there, high or low, good or bad, in the sense that all of those values could be defined as here where I am and there where I'm not, higher than me, lower than me, good for me, bad for me. So all of those kinds of judgments disappear when this unshakable and impersonal aspect has been reached. And then as said, there's neither here nor there nor in between the two. And this is the end of dukkha, the end of suffering. This is Nibbana. Another quality of Nibbana, they say that Nibbana is truthful. So we just mentioned that if the mind is grasping onto a certain sign, some limited or partial aspect of another object or another being, in order to recognize how we're going to relate to it and what we want to do about it, then whatever we have conceived about that object, it's always not true. It's never the complete truth. But if we're not doing that grasping, not grasping after the sign, if we are simply in a state of stillness and receptivity in connection to objects, then we have a chance to see them as they actually are, to see them not in relationship to myself, but seeing them without regard to myself. So we spoke earlier about manana, which is the process of imagining, and sankhara, which is the process of forming an intention, and how those are two different aspects of the creative process. I gave an example earlier. If you were going to buy a house or build a house, that at first you might imagine the kind of house that you want. And without respect to what's necessarily attainable by you or within your budget or within your ability, you think about all the things you would like to have in this ideal imagined house. And then you use your volition, you use your intention skillfully to investigate reality and to bring your imagination into some kind of a compromise with reality in order to get the best house you can in accordance with your wishes. In order to come out of this standpoint of agitation, disturbance, falsehood, and come towards this other position. The term, the Pali word is called apatitita vijnana, which is the unestablished consciousness. This is the state of consciousness that's not inclining in any direction at all. We suggested earlier, now it's possible that one can directly challenge the tendency or the constant pattern of the mind of forming, inventing reality, forming concepts, creating stories about our reality which are not really true and which are not leading to peace but instead leading to more disturbance. And it's true that there are some ways in which this conceptual thinking is inherently disturbed. Even, I find, because of my mental type, I don't necessarily find it easy or even possible to stop conceptual thinking, or even to just cut off conceptual thinking by force. But then one can use skillful concepts to undermine unskillful concepts. So an unskillful concept could be I'm right and you're wrong, or my people are right and the other people are wrong. there's in the arts, you can see a way that concepts or things that are imagined, things that are fictional, are brought forth for the purpose of stirring up emotions. I think this is one of the things that drama does. And it's not what's favored or approved of by the Buddha, but some rhetoric can be more virtuous than others. One example that I really like of what I would consider, possibly a virtuous rhetoric. I remember in 2012, I think Senator Obama gave a speech in which he said, "There's no red America and no blue America. There's just one America." And it was so inspiring. We don't have to be so divided and polarized. It's just one America. There's no black America and white America. There's just one America. And we felt like it's uplifted to give up those conflicted, polarized classifications that divided us. But at the same time, if you really look at it, that wasn't like a completely truthful statement. It's like, well, in some ways we could say we're one America, and in some ways we're not one America, we're polarized. But for the purpose of rhetoric, for stirring up the inspiration and the determination and the goodwill, the speaker was saying something rhetorical with a virtuous intention. This is still an established consciousness, and it only can take us so far. We can't get to heaven with that kind of rhetoric. Or we could get to heaven, but we can't get to Nibbana with that kind of rhetoric. We have to be able to come to this unestablished consciousness. At the very beginning of this morning, I used a metaphor from the sutta that was given by the Buddha that's saying, if you think of somebody painting a mural on the wall with many color paints, with a perfect image of a person, that's how the being like the God who delights in creation. If the mind has a delight and relish in what we experience, then that can give rise to the creation of a self. It can give rise to the whole cycle of dependent origination, culminating in craving, culminating in being trapped on the cycle of rebirth, of the cycle of existence, being trapped in the process of life, not seeing the way out of it. But the opposite image that the Buddha gave in that sutta was imagining a house with a window, and the window is in the west of the house, and the sun rises in the east. When the first light comes along, the light comes through the window and lands on the wall. The Buddha said, well, what if there's no wall? What happens to the light then? He says, well, it falls on the floor. And so, well, what if there's no floor? Well, the light falls on the ground. And what if there's no ground? The light falls on the water underneath the ground. And what if there's no water underneath the ground? Then The light has no place to land. The light is simply going through space, and when it's not landing, you don't see it. So that's the unestablished light, just traveling through space, but it's invisible, unestablished. If we see the danger in creation, knowing how fundamental this grounding that the natural person has in their purpose of life. That disillusionment can be very dangerous if they have a concept of a self. That disillusionment can become arising in existential anxiety, in feeling life is meaningless, and then becoming very depressed, even suicidal, or very angry, very upset, and this, this happens naturally if people are not trained to have a little bit of a caution about their purpose in life. So young people are born and, they see the world of adults and have this imagination about what adulthood could be like. They want to have a job and some wealth and a family and happiness, and then it doesn't work out that way. Whether it be through a major catastrophe or through just the inevitable disappointments in life becoming a boring treadmill, they become, disappointed they didn't get what was promised to them. And so that sense of meaninglessness is something that is, I think, the reason why the Buddha has set forth this unestablished consciousness, or this vision of the unborn and uncreated, as where we can find some kind of grounding. There are other kinds of a ground that a person can develop and maintain and cultivate along the way. You could say that even if life is filled with disappointments, if we are practicing loving kindness and compassion, that then we can find that our life can be meaningful by practicing and acting based on this kind and compassionate intention towards others. Even if the catastrophes are really sharp, one can find some kind of a ground, some kind of a basis for mental health in having that grounding in compassion. Another kind of a ground, a foothold, a space of stability that can be a basis for keeping our sanity, even though we confront, we're confronting what is ungrounded, and that some things that we thought were meaningless, we thought they were meaningful, but they're not really meaningful. If we understand the path of practice, and we depend on those practices, if we depend on the Eightfold Noble Path, this is another way of having a security of a foothold that gives us a standpoint to sustain our mental health. And it's a good foothold because it's a foothold that is leading towards the end of craving, that's leading towards the end of falsehood, that's leading towards the end of conceit, leading towards relinquishing and letting go, leading towards discovering happiness in what has been let go, in where we experience freedom, not taking us in the direction of trying to find our true happiness in what we can acquire, what we can gain, what we can grasp onto, or what we can hold on to. So in the actually the previous day-long that we had 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the practices that we can rely on. And I was trying to put forward that idea that there is a safety. Even though all concepts are ultimately not to be confused with the actual reality. Anything that can be explained and put into words is not the same thing as the actual truth. I come to the Dhamma of Peggy Lee. I brought this up before one time. One of her greatest hits was, "Is That All There Is?" And so this afternoon I took a few minutes and read her bio, and it's kind of amazing. She lost her mother, and she experienced hardships and divorce, and so then in her hit song that she wrote when she was about 49 years old, she said she writes about being a little girl when the house caught on fire, seeing the look on her father's face as he picked her up and took her outside, standing out on the pavement watching her whole life go up in flames, and thinking, is that all there is to fire? Is that all there is? This must have been a very wise little girl. And then later, Daddy took her to the circus, and she saw the clowns and the greatest show on earth, and the elephants and dancing bears and the beautiful lady in pink, and sat there watching and having the feeling that something is missing. I don't know what, but she said, "Is that all there is to the circus? Is that all there is?" Then she fell in love to the most wonderful boy in the world, had long walks gazing into the eyes, being in love. And then one day he went away. I thought I would die, but I didn't. And then I said to myself, is that all there is to love? Is that all there is? Is it all there is? And so, now Peggy Lee was a very successful singer-songwriter, and she was the only female singer-songwriter of her era who had anything like this level of success. So she was engaged in the creativity, but she did not hear the Dhamma because the theme or the refrain of this song, if that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball. if that's all there is. So that would be, I think, to my mind, an expression of despair. A very sorrowful, tragic, and nihilistic culmination to life, even for one who's done good in many kinds of ways, and in terms of many kinds of success, personal success and goodness and creativity. Our answer is different than that. Our answer is to realize that all of our creativity and the concepts and the words and the artifacts and the things that we create are like a child's toy. We need them to talk to people. We need them to communicate. It's part of life. We don't have to be angry about concepts and words. We don't have to be thinking concepts and words are evil. It's just this is what we've got to use in order to investigate, explore, and talk about and discuss the truth. And then in our practice, in our meditation, in our mindfulness, in developing wisdom, we try to gradually, step by step, take off the layers and layers of self-conceit, self-centered thinking, selfish thinking, to become, to aim towards looking, what if it's all impersonal? What if the self-referential aspect of it can disappear completely, and we can experience it directly. Nibbana is not able to be explained in conceptual terms. But you might be able to know and experience if you become enlightened. You will know it by its effects. You will know that you have enlightenment because of experiencing this full knowing, this equipoise, or this perfect equanimity, this freedom in relationship to all the processes of life. One will experience being hungerless without thirst. Even at the basic level of what sustains the physical body, or at the level of what we need in terms of social supports to keep our sanity going, what we need in terms of contact and experience in order to keep the mind alive. All of these processes will be experienced as something that's it's going on. We're still participating in it. We still got a body. We're still alive. But we don't have the hunger. We don't have the thirst anymore. Our relationship to all of that experience is free. I think I'd like to break now and give the last 15 minutes of this talk for discussion. So to close the formal part of this talk, let's do the closing homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam namasami, I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham Namami, I bow to the Sangha.